däckverkstad.hjul.com. Däck och fälgar online direkt hem till din dörr eller närmaste verkstad.
That acceleration is brutal. Design in different brands becomes rather extreme in some cases, but I think that Mercedes, they've really gone into an era of design which is very elegant. Maybe there's some of their smaller SUVs that are not that very, very beautiful, but many of the other ones like the S-Class, the E-Class, the C-Class, and all their coupés, they are just exquisite to look at. The new C-Class, I like that plug-in hybrid version, which you can run on electric for about 110 kilometers, which you can add an onboard charger, 50 kilowatt, to charge it up rapidly when you go on some longer trips. But this one is the whole 9 yards. This is the new C63 Amg SE Performance. And when we're still on the subject of design, look at this one. You might not notice that it's a AMG car, a pure AMG car coming, because it doesn't feel very, very angry and super expressive and bulky as the predecessors did. And I somehow like that because it becomes a bit more of a sleeper design-wise. It's very elegant. They've toned it down and it almost looks like a normal C-Class, which you can get a AMG package to or something. Anyway, underneath lies some serious power. Now, there's downsizing on the agenda, of course, in many cars. And this is real downsizing. Now there's no V8, there's no V6. There is a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 476 horsepower. But that together with the new hybrid system that this one got, which has an electric motor that sits on the rear axle, producing 204 horsepower, this becomes a power package like no other in the class. So altogether there's 680 horsepower and the torque, 1020 Newton meters. Now that is punchy. And of course this comes with some downsides. A little more weight, 2090 kilos. So in this class, well, that's very heavy. And you can sense that when pushing it a bit harder in the corners, even though it's got rear wheel steering. It helps it along, and that rear wheel steering works excellent, I think. But you really need it in this car. But here we are again with that topic of having a car that you need to fight a little with, and you need to learn, you need to practice and become the driver that fits into this type of car. That car that requires the respect of knowing its weight and where to brake and where to put it in. And I love a little struggle with a car, always. But that 4-cylinder is a bit proud because at the moment it's the most powerful 4-cylinder production engine in the world. So elegance, power, all combined, but all combined in a very nice, elegant package together with a comfort that is just way beyond in its class. And the range is only 13 kilometers. And you might find that a bit pathetic, but that's not the thing. The battery in this one is one of the things that has impressed me the most. When you start pushing it and when it's empty, it doesn't take long until it's full again. So the power in this sports car compared to many others that are plug-in sports cars is that you can regain that power very quickly and you can maintain those 680 horsepower. And that is just great because in many other cars, well, you lose those if you haven't charged it. And they're not that quick to recharge again while on the road. It sits on that rear axle and it provides it immediate power whenever you need it. And it can also distribute the power to the front wheels when there is a slip on the back wheels. So it's highly sophisticated and highly technological, this new package. So they haven't been lazy, Mercedes, while keeping the technology on a very, very high level. 680 horsepower. And that number really pushes aside the BMW M3 competition and the RS4 competition. Almost 700 horsepower and 1000 Newton meters plus in a not that very big car. But still, it's got the weight. It's 4-wheel driven and that battery pack weighs 80 kilos. All in all, it weighs a little over 2 tons. And still, that is a very hefty weight for a car in this segment. But when you roll off in comfort, it is a very subtle ride. it is comfortable, it is quiet. The seats, they still have that little too sporty, ambitious-like feeling. But in this car, it really suits it because you want to feel like you're in place. And the advancement of putting this very high technological battery on the rear, even in comfort, when you just push it a little, you can feel all that torque and you can feel that it's very, very much on its toes. And it almost feels like a fully electric car, how it synchronizes together with the engine. So it's a very, very strong combination, this one, that feels like it works really, really well, even when you cruise along very calmly. And then you got these 8 different drive modes. Comfort, you got snow, wet, individual, battery hold, so you can hold that battery charge. You got electric, fully electric, so it just runs on electric and it becomes even more quiet. And you got sport, sport plus, and you got race. And in race you can set a lot of different fun stuff. You can get into drift mode, and we'll try that out as well. And the aggression of the gears when you get into race, well, that is quick. It picks up speed extremely well. And in this race mode, you can really feel that it's sucked to the ground. It's really, really firm in that setting. But there is still a feeling when you get into an AMG, you need to really know that, okay, it's downsizing, it's real downsizing now, when comparing it to the V8s from the olden days. And they gave some different type of feeling. Always starting it up, you know, that thrill, and how the whole car just shakes of that rumble. That's AMG to me. But you need to look ahead and embrace what the technology brings. And I think this is interesting, especially how well it works and how much power you can gain from it. So Mercedes, they're proud to say that this C63 AMG SE Performance is a game changer in their 55-year-old history of producing AMG cars. And something that I also like is that they released this estate version at the same time as they released the sedan version. So there's no hype around waiting for that estate because it's the same car. It was the same with the BMW M3. You know, oh, we were waiting for that estate. Well, it's the same car. A little more practical, but otherwise, what's the fuzz about, really? And still, I think sedans looks a lot better. But this one, it looks really nice. All the way from the front to the back. Some plastic here just to maintain that look. It says Turbo E-Performance. You got that little nostril, which lets out a little air there at least. But here's something. Thank you very much for real handles. Every time you come to a car that has these well-made handles, you just get happy. And at the front, the inlets, they are big, and this grille that bulges out in a nice AMG fashion. And a nice touch that I like is that a Felterbach AMG emblem in the front instead of the star. But when getting an estate, you always think that, yeah, I got the practical one. But in this one, well, it's the battery, and then it's that electric motor on top. So you lose a lot of space in there. It doesn't look that very good if you want to put in all of your bags when going on a vacation. But give and take here, you got something very special power-wise. But what I noticed here, which is great, is that you can be active on some parts of the road, and then all of a sudden when you cool down, it has really regenerated power back to the battery very quickly. So all of a sudden you drive calmly, and it really transfers seamlessly over to that battery when you suddenly just want to cruise. But even though you can cruise for very long on fully electric, it's only 13 kilometers. That little range, well, that takes you to the motorway or into town or through town. And one other thing that is positive about that is that you might not need to start up the rumble of the engine and waking up the neighbors if you start off early. It is quiet, and it really swallows the road in a grown-up way. So it becomes a real good long-distance cruiser. So even though you got the 4MATIC four-wheel drive system, the rear wheel steering, and that chassis setup, you can feel that when pushing it in hard through corners, you are carrying a bit of weight, and that is never super sporty or super racy. but it feels very planned. It feels very comfortable, and I think the steering and everything, it works really well. So that's to the very, very extent of pushing it. That's where it starts to sweat a little. The cells of the batteries here, they are cooled a bit better, so they keep an even temperature all the time for high performance driving. And just gear down and push it. And of course it picks up speed extremely well. There is some latency to the brakes, where a part of the braking travel is recouping and regenerating. Feels a bit spongy and doesn't react that well. You need to be a bit more determined of getting the maximum grip when driving a bit more fast. And then we change into race. Feels a lot more planted here. The steering is so immediate. Now we're running on some winter tires, so of course you get an even better and crisper feeling when running on the original summer tires, sport tires.
And when on the topic of tires, do you know which tire manufacturer that has produced most tires in the world?
Inside it's classy as always in a Mercedes. If we get on to that thing about, the little squeaks that you could feel before, I think they've put this a lot better together. Steering wheel, of course, strong one. Some Alcantara, some leather. This double spoke with the touches on here. A bit small, but I think I've managed them rather well now. I know where they are, but they're many. They're many and they're small, so you just need to have a delicate touch. The vents here, they look nice. You get all these lights and ambient lights. Split it into two different windows up in the roof, so maybe it's not called panoramic, but anyway. And then you got all these settings here. If you want to go discreet in your cluster here, you want super sport, sporty, classic, and all of these. The seats, they are just great. I like them. For me, they're just perfect fit. They're not too wide and they're not too small. So I like them, and it's a very quiet cabin. As you drive along, it's well isolated. So it's well done, this one. So everything that is integrated into this screen works rather good. You can push it a little here to get into the different menus. It takes a little while to get around everything here, but when you're in it, it works just great. Great sound system. You got the Burmeister. You got all the safety systems that warns you if you're tired. And it's just a safe car, and it's a comfortable car. Back seat, important for a small family car. Yeah, well, space is good. Sitting behind myself there. Very nice cut out here for your knees. So if you have long legs, well, you want to stretch out, and there's space there. That's good. The light, of course, that ambience light is great. Nice touches with sharp, small reading lights. The seats, they are good to look at. They look rather tiny and small. Elegant, so it becomes very roomy in here. Like that. And you got a little menu here with all the temperatures that can be set. I also like that, look at the design of this one. The panel looks really, really nice together with that ambient light. So when driving at night, well, all of these lights, they really enhance the feeling, and a lot of customers like that. It can get a bit too much because nowadays it's a lot about that ambience lighting and the sound and how you want to fulfill some new experience, but it becomes a bit boring, just let it be there. Anyhow, it looks nice, and when you sit in it, it's a cozy place to be. Race start. 0 to 100 in 3.4 seconds. And it's so effective, it just lunges you away. And the top speed for this estate is 270 kilometers an hour. The sedan version is limited to 280 kilometers. But what I like is how this also has that graceful tone about it, even though it's sporty and very brutal. But of course this is a super fast machine, and the C63 has always been, but it has been this rear wheel driven, super drift, powerful, shaky V8 type of car. And when stepping into these cars, you've always known that you're in a real deal AMG car. In this one, well, you can feel it when you've been driving it for a while. It's got all the pedigree, but in a new package, and more high-tech advanced package for the future, or for the time being. At least being half electric and not fully electric. And that is important for being an AMG, because you want some of that sound. So it's easier to define this as a AMG car compared to some of the electric, like the EQS 53 AMG. More difficult in a fully electric car, because all the electric cars, they feel the same. But here you still got the sound from the engine, because of this engine. And this 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, well, that's the most powerful production engine in the world. And I mean, why not putting in this hybrid system? Because it gives you so much more power and so much more torque. And it's already regenerated more than half of the battery again from almost zero. So that works extremely well, and I like that. And here's also something: you pull these together, drift mode, paddle up, and now you got drift mode. So let's see how that works out. And that works really, really good. It's very balanced together with the rear wheel steering, and that drift mode feels like it's easier than any other car to drift around. And I must say that I like it a lot. I think it's a really cool package, because I like plug-in hybrids, and I like that they are integrated into super sports cars nowadays. It gives it that much more power that you want, can do so much more on the rear axle as it does in this one. It gives it so much more direct input. So of course that extra weight, it kills it a bit, but I think the advancements of it are almost better, because if you're a driver that likes a bit of competition, as I always say, well, then you need to adopt to the driving of this car. It weighs a bit more. Well, you have that technology that can get you out through corners, being a bit more agile, giving you better response. Well, all of that sums it up to a new form of ingredient for a sports car that might be even more effective than a lighter one.